"Honey, I think we should pause our marriage." Those 8 words hit me like a freight train loaded with divorce papers and bad decisions. I was sitting in my favorite chair, the one with the coffee stain that looked like Texas, when my wife Tessa dropped this bomb on me like she was suggesting we pause Netflix between episodes. "Pause it," I repeated, wondering if I'd somehow slipped into an alternate reality where marriages came with remote controls. "What are we, a streaming service?" Tessa stood in our living room, perfectly manicured hands on her designer-clad hips, looking like she'd just solved world hunger instead of suggesting we put our 15-year marriage on hold. Her blonde hair was styled in that expensive way that screams, "I have important places to be and people to impress." "Jamie, don't be dramatic," she said, using that tone she reserved for explaining things to particularly slow children. "It's just for 3 weeks while I'm in Tokyo on this business trip. We both need space to think about what we want. I'm Jamie Wyatt, 38 years old, and I fix computers for a living. Not the glamorous kind of computer work where you hack into government databases wearing sunglasses in dark rooms, the boring kind where you explain to middle-aged accountants why they can't download 17 different weather apps without their laptop turning into a very expensive paperweight. Space to think," I said slowly, like I was testing the words for poison. "And this brilliant idea came to you when, exactly?" "I've been thinking about it for weeks," Tessa replied, not meeting my eyes. She was doing that thing where she fidgets with her wedding ring, spinning it around her finger like she was trying to unscrew it. "We're in a rut, Jamie. When was the last time we had a real conversation? When did we last do something exciting together?" I could have pointed out that just last weekend I'd suggested we try that new Italian place downtown, and she'd shot it down because she was too busy preparing for Tokyo. I could have mentioned that every time I tried to start a conversation, she was glued to her phone, texting someone from work about urgent marketing strategies that apparently couldn't wait until business hours. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I asked, "So you want to pause our marriage while you go to Tokyo with your boss?" "Declan is not just my boss," she said quickly, then caught herself. "I mean, yes, he's my supervisor, but this is a legitimate business opportunity. The Yamamoto account could make my career." Declan Porter, 41 years old, drives a black Audi that probably costs more than my annual salary and has the kind of smile that makes you want to count your fingers after shaking his hand. He'd been sniffing around Tessa for months, always finding reasons to keep her late at the office, always texting her about urgent projects that seemed to require discussion at expensive restaurants. "Right," I said. "Business with Declan in Tokyo for 3 weeks. "Don't use that tone with me, Jamie." "What tone?" "This is my regular voice. The voice of a man whose wife just suggested we put our marriage on airplane mode while she jets off to Japan with her boss." Tessa's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and I caught the ghost of a smile before she schooled her expression back to marital discussion seriousness. "Let me guess," I said. "Urgent business?" "Actually, yes. Declan's confirming our flight details." She was already typing a response, her fingers flying over the screen with the kind of enthusiasm she hadn't shown for anything involving me in months. I watched my wife of 15 years text another man about their upcoming trip together, and something cold settled in my stomach. It wasn't jealousy exactly. It was more like the feeling you get when you realize the weird noise your car's been making isn't going to fix itself, and the mechanic is going to use words like total engine replacement and cheaper to buy a new one. "So how does this pause thing work exactly?" I asked. "Do we shake hands, sign a contract, change our Facebook status to, 'It's complicated'?" "You're being ridiculous." "I'm being ridiculous. You're the one who wants to put our marriage in timeout while you go on a romantic getaway with—" "It's not romantic." The sharpness in her voice told me I'd hit something. "God, Jamie, this is exactly why we need space. You're so suspicious and negative about everything. Can't you just trust me?" Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Trust. Right. Trust the woman who'd been coming home later and later, who'd started buying lingerie I'd never seen her wear, who suddenly needed to work late every time Declan had a crisis that required her immediate attention. I trust you, I lied. I just think it's weird timing, that's all. This sudden need for a marriage pause right before your big trip. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Declan, no doubt. She read it and actually giggled. Giggled. When was the last time I'd made her giggle? Look, she said, putting her phone face down on the coffee table like that would somehow make this conversation more sincere. I know this is sudden, but we've been going through the motions for months, Jamie. We're like roommates who happen to share a last name. Maybe some time apart will help us remember why we fell in love in the first place. Or maybe it'll help you figure out if you'd rather be Mrs. Porter instead of Mrs. Wyatt. The words hung in the air between us like a bad smell. Tessa's face went through several expressions: surprise, anger, guilt, and finally, cold determination. That's exactly the kind of thinking that's poisoning our marriage, she said. I'm trying to save what we have, and you're making accusations. I'm not making accusations. I'm making observations. You want to pause our marriage while you go to Tokyo with a man who looks at you like you're the last slice of pizza at a college party. Declan is married. So are you, technically. Another buzz from her phone. She grabbed it immediately, and this time she didn't bother hiding her smile. I have to pack, she said, standing up. We can talk about this more when I get back. From our pause. From Tokyo, and yes, from our pause. Maybe you'll have had time to think about what you really want from this marriage. She headed toward the stairs, then stopped and turned back to me. For what it's worth, Jamie, I do love you. I just don't know if I'm in love with you anymore. Maybe 3 weeks apart will help me figure that out. And with that cheerful little bombshell, she disappeared upstairs, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the sound of her phone buzzing with what I was absolutely certain were not business-related messages from Declan Porter. I sat in my Texas-stained chair and stared at the ceiling, wondering when exactly my life had turned into a bad country song. My wife wanted to pause our marriage like it was a Netflix show she'd lost interest in, and I was supposed to just sit here like a good little husband while she figured out if she wanted to trade me in for a newer model with a better job and a flashier car. The thing is, I might not be the smartest guy in the world, but I'm not stupid. I know what a business trip looks like, and I know what a romantic getaway looks like, and Tessa's sudden need for space was starting to look a lot more like the latter. But if she wanted to play games, I could play games too. After all, I fix computers for a living. I know a thing or two about troubleshooting problems, and right now, my marriage had a pretty big bug that needed fixing. The next morning, Tessa was gone before I woke up, leaving only a note on the kitchen counter that said, "Flight leaves at 2 p.m., see you in 3 weeks. T." Not "love, Tessa," or "miss you already," or even "try not to burn the house down." Just T, like she was signing a business memo. I made coffee in the machine she'd bought because it looked good on our granite countertops, not because it made good coffee, and tried to process the fact that my wife had just put our marriage on hold and jetted off to Japan with her boss. My phone rang. Ethan Rodriguez, my best friend since college, and the only person I knew who could make pessimism sound like an art form. "Dude," he said without preamble, "please tell me you're not sitting there feeling sorry for yourself." "Good morning to you too, Ethan. And I'm not feeling sorry for myself. I'm drinking terrible coffee and contemplating the existential nature of marriage as a social construct." "So you're feeling sorry for yourself. Got it. Look, I heard about Tessa's little business trip through the grapevine." The grapevine being? My girlfriend works in HR at Pinnacle Marketing, same company as your wife and her boyfriend. I nearly choked on my expensive bad coffee. Boyfriend? Poor choice of words. I meant her boss, the one she's currently flying to Tokyo with, alone. It's a business trip, Ethan. Right. And I'm the King of England. Jamie, man, you need to wake up. When's the last time you went on a business trip that required 3 weeks in Japan? What kind of marketing emergency needs that much hands-on attention? I didn't have a good answer for that, mostly because I'd been asking myself the same questions since yesterday. Look, Ethan continued, I'm not trying to be a dick here, but Sarah mentioned something interesting. Apparently, it's just Tessa and Declan going to Tokyo. No other team members, no clients flying in to meet them, just the two of them in a city known for its romantic hotels and discreet culture. Sarah told you that? Sarah likes you. She thinks Tessa's been acting shady for months. The whole office has been talking about how cozy she and Declan have been getting. I set my coffee cup down harder than necessary. The whole office? Jamie, they've been having lunch together 3 times a week. He sends her flowers on random Tuesdays. Last month, Sarah saw them leaving together for what Tessa claimed was a working dinner at some fancy steakhouse downtown at 8 p.m. on a Friday. Each piece of information hit me like a small, perfectly aimed punch. I'd noticed the flowers, actually. Tessa had claimed they were from a grateful client. I'd thought it was nice that she was building such good relationships with customers. God, I was an idiot. So what are you going to do? Ethan asked. What can I do? She's already gone. She paused our marriage, remember? I'm supposed to sit here like a good little husband and wait for her to decide if she wants to keep me or trade me in. Or, Ethan said, his voice taking on that tone he used when he was about to suggest something that would probably get us both in trouble, you could do a little investigating. Find out exactly what kind of business they're conducting in Tokyo. How am I supposed to do that? Fly to Japan and follow them around? You don't need to go to Japan, man. You're a computer guy. Use your skills. Check her email, her social media, her cloud storage. If she's cheating, there's going to be evidence. That's invasion of privacy. She paused your marriage and flew to Japan with another man. I think the privacy ship has sailed, crashed into an iceberg, and sunk to the bottom of the ocean. He had a point. A morally questionable point, but a point nonetheless. Besides, Ethan added, she probably didn't even bother to hide anything. Cheaters always think they're smarter than they are. They get sloppy. After I hung up with Ethan, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, staring at Tessa's note and thinking about trust and marriage and the kind of person I wanted to be. The old Jamie would have respected his wife's privacy, would have waited patiently for her to return, would have given her the benefit of the doubt. But the old Jamie's wife hadn't asked to pause their marriage before flying off to Tokyo with her boss. I went upstairs to Tessa's home office, a converted bedroom she'd claimed when she got her promotion last year. She'd made it clear this was her space, and I'd respected that boundary. But boundaries change when your wife decides your marriage needs a commercial break. Her laptop was gone, of course, but she had an old tablet in the desk drawer that she used occasionally. I powered it up, and to my surprise, it automatically logged into her email account. Apparently, she'd never bothered to log out. The first thing I noticed was how many emails she had from Declan. Not just work emails, either. Messages sent at weird hours, with subject lines like, thinking of you, and can't wait for Tokyo. I opened one from last week. T. Can't stop thinking about our conversation yesterday. 3 weeks in Tokyo feels like a lifetime and not nearly long enough at the same time. I've booked us that suite at the Park Hyatt you mentioned, the one with the view of Mount Fuji. Can't wait to wake up next to you and watch the sunrise. D. My hands were shaking as I read it. Suite. Singular. Wake up next to you. I opened another one. Darling T. I know you're nervous about Jamie, but you said yourself that your marriage has been over in everything but name for months. 3 weeks together will give us time to figure out our future. I've already talked to Monica about divorce proceedings. She's not going to fight me on it. She's been having her own affair for years. We can be together properly soon. All my love, D. I read that email 3 times before the words fully sank in. Declan was planning to divorce his wife. Tessa knew about it. They'd been planning this for months. Our marriage hadn't been paused. It had been canceled, and I was the last one to get the memo. I kept reading, each email a fresh knife twist. Plans for romantic dinners, discussions about which hotels had the most privacy, Tessa complaining about having to pretend everything was normal with me until they left for Tokyo. In one particularly brutal message she'd written, "I feel terrible about lying to Jamie, but what's the alternative? Tell him I've fallen in love with you and that our marriage was a mistake? He'd never understand. He's so boring, D. When's the last time he surprised me with anything? When's the last time he made me feel alive? You do that just by walking into a room." I closed the tablet and sat in Tessa's chair, surrounded by her things, trying to process the fact that my wife of 15 years thought I was boring, that she'd fallen in love with another man, that she'd been planning to leave me for months while pretending everything was fine. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal. It was the realization that she was probably right. When had I last surprised her? When had I last made her feel alive? I'd gotten comfortable, complacent. I'd stopped trying to win her over because I thought I'd already won. But you know what? Being boring didn't make me stupid, and being comfortable didn't mean I was going to roll over and let her and Declan walk all over me. If Tessa wanted to play games, if she wanted to pause our marriage while she auditioned my replacement, then she was about to learn that even boring guys can surprise you. I picked up my phone and called Ethan back. "Change of plans," I said when he answered. "I need your help with something." "What kind of something?" "The kind that's going to make Tessa's little Tokyo vacation a lot more complicated than she planned." Ethan came over that evening with a 6-pack of beer and the kind of grin that usually meant someone was about to make a series of questionable decisions. "All right," he said, settling into my couch like he was preparing for a war council. "What's the plan? And please tell me it involves public humiliation." I'd spent the afternoon reading through more of Tessa's emails and text messages, each one adding another layer to my understanding of just how thoroughly I'd been played. The woman I'd been married to for 15 years had been living a double life for months, and I'd been too trusting, too comfortable, too boring to notice. "First," I said, opening a beer, "we need to understand what we're dealing with. This isn't just an affair. They're planning a whole new life together. Declan's divorcing his wife, Tessa's obviously planning to divorce me, and they think they're going to ride off into the sunset together. Okay, so they're delusional. What else is new? The thing is, they're both being incredibly stupid about it. They're using company email for personal messages. They're charging romantic dinners to the corporate account. Declan's been telling people at work that this Tokyo trip is essential for landing a major client, but I checked. There is no client meeting scheduled." Ethan leaned forward. "So they're committing fraud." "Among other things. But here's the beautiful part. They think they're so smart, so careful. Tessa actually wrote in one email that she was glad I was too trusting and naive to ever suspect anything. Ouch. Yeah, but you know what? Sometimes it pays to be underestimated. I pulled out a notebook where I'd been making lists. I've got copies of all their emails, screenshots of their text messages, credit card statements showing Declan paying for hotel rooms and jewelry that definitely weren't for his wife. And I've got something else. What? Monica Porter's phone number. Ethan nearly choked on his beer. Declan's wife? How the hell did you get that? LinkedIn. Turns out she's a corporate lawyer who specializes in divorce cases. Very successful, very well connected, and according to Declan's emails, completely unaware that her husband is planning to leave her for his subordinate. You're going to call her? I'm going to do better than that. I'm going to meet her. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I put on my best suit, the one I'd bought for Tessa's company Christmas party last year, and drove to downtown. Monica Porter worked at a high-end law firm in one of those glass towers that make you feel poor just looking at them. I waited in the coffee shop across the street until I saw her leave for lunch. She was exactly what I'd expected. Tall, elegant, with the kind of confidence that comes from winning arguments for a living. She looked like the type of woman who would not take kindly to discovering her husband was cheating on her with a marketing executive. "Mrs. Porter?" I approached her as she waited for the light to change. She turned, and I got my first look at the woman Declan was planning to abandon. She had sharp green eyes and prematurely gray hair that she wore like a crown. This was not a woman who would go quietly into divorce proceedings. "Yes? My name is Jamie Wyatt. I think we need to talk about your husband and my wife." Her expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. "I'm sorry. Do I know you?" "Not yet, but we have something in common. Our spouses are currently in Tokyo together, supposedly on business." She studied my face for a long moment. "Coffee," she said finally. "There's a place around the corner where we can talk privately." 20 minutes later, we were sitting in a quiet booth while I showed Monica printouts of the emails I'd found. She read through them with the kind of professional detachment that probably served her well in court, but I could see her jaw getting tighter with each page. "How long have you known?" she asked when she finished reading. "I figured it out yesterday. You?" I suspected something was wrong for months, but I thought it was work stress. Declan's been distant, distracted. He's been working late, taking mysterious phone calls, buying clothes I've never seen him wear. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I'm a divorce lawyer, Mr. Wyatt. I should have seen the signs." "Sometimes we don't see what we don't want to see." "Speak for yourself. I see everything now." She tapped the emails with one perfectly manicured finger. "My husband is an idiot, using company resources for an affair, discussing divorce plans over email, charging personal expenses to the corporate account. I could destroy his career with this evidence alone." "What about Tessa?" Monica's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Your wife works for Pinnacle Marketing, correct? A company that has very strict policies about workplace relationships and ethical conduct. I'm quite familiar with their HR director. We went to law school together." I was starting to like Monica Porter. "So, what do you want to do about it?" I asked. "I want them to pay," she said simply. "Both of them. I want them to understand that actions have consequences, and that betraying the people who love you isn't a game." I was thinking the same thing. Good. Because I have some ideas, and I think you're going to like them. We spent the next hour planning. Monica had resources I couldn't have imagined. Connections in the legal world, friends in high places, and a thorough understanding of exactly how to make someone's life very complicated very quickly. "The beauty of this," she explained, "is that they've given us everything we need. The emails prove the affair, the credit card statements prove fraud, the fact that they lied about the nature of the Tokyo trip proves professional misconduct. But they're already in Tokyo. How do we—" "Mr. Wyatt," Monica interrupted, "they may be in Tokyo, but their lives are here. Their jobs, their reputations, their social circles. By the time they come back from their little romantic getaway, they're going to find that their world has changed significantly." She pulled out her phone and started making notes. "I'll handle the legal aspects, filing for divorce, freezing joint accounts, documenting the fraud. You handle the social side. Make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of people they really are." "I'm not sure I'm good at the social thing." "You don't have to be good at it. You just have to be honest. Tell people the truth about what happened. Show them the evidence. Let their own consciences do the rest." That evening, I called Ethan and filled him in on the plan. "Dude," he said, "Monica Porter sounds terrifying. I think I'm in love with her." "She's married. Not for much longer, apparently. But seriously, this is good. You're not just getting revenge, you're getting justice. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Revenge is personal. Justice is about making sure people face the consequences of their actions. Tessa and Declan made their choices. Now they get to live with the results." That night, I started making my own choices. I changed the locks on the house. I moved half our joint savings into a personal account. I made copies of all the evidence I'd gathered and stored them in multiple locations. And then I did something that felt both terrifying and liberating. I started telling people the truth. I called Tessa's sister first. "Jamie?" Karen sounded surprised to hear from me. "Is everything okay?" Tessa said you two were taking a break. That's one way to put it. Karen, there's something you need to know about why Tessa really went to Tokyo. By the time I finished explaining the situation and reading her some of the more damning emails, Karen was quiet for a long time. "I can't believe she would do this," she finally said. "I mean, I can believe it. Tessa's always been selfish. But I can't believe she would be so stupid about it. She thought I'd never find out. She thought wrong. Jamie, I'm so sorry. You deserve better than this." "Thanks, Karen. I just thought you should know the truth before she comes back and tries to spin some story about how this is all my fault. Don't worry about that. I'll make sure the family knows what really happened." Next, I called our mutual friends, the couples we'd had dinner with, the people we'd gone on vacation with, the social circle that Tessa cared so much about impressing. Each conversation was easier than the last. I didn't have to convince anyone of anything. I just had to show them the evidence and let them draw their own conclusions. By the end of the week, everyone who mattered knew that Tessa Wyatt was in Tokyo with her boss, planning to leave her husband for a man who was also cheating on his wife. The story spread through our social circle like wildfire, and the reaction was exactly what I'd hoped for. People were disgusted, not just with the affair, but with the deception, the lies, the casual cruelty of it all. Monica, meanwhile, was working her own magic in the professional sphere. She'd contacted Pinnacle Marketing's HR department with evidence of Declan and Tessa's misconduct. She'd filed for divorce and frozen all of Declan's accounts. She'd even reached out to the client that Declan claimed they were meeting in Tokyo, a client who confirmed that no such meeting was scheduled. "They're going to come back to a very different world than the one they left," Monica told me over coffee. "No jobs, no money, no friends, and no sympathy." "Do you think we're going too far?" Monica's green eyes were ice cold. "Mr. Wyatt, they were planning to destroy 2 marriages and defraud a company to fund their affair. They made their choices. We're just making sure those choices have appropriate consequences." She was right. Tessa and Declan had gambled that they could have their cake and eat it too, that they could betray everyone who trusted them and face no real consequences. They were about to learn how wrong they were. While Tessa and Declan were enjoying their romantic getaway in Tokyo, their carefully constructed lives back home were falling apart like a house of cards in a hurricane. Monica Porter, it turned out, was even more ruthless than I'd imagined. Within days of our meeting, she'd filed for divorce, frozen all of Declan's accounts, and had a private investigator documenting every romantic dinner and hotel stay that Declan had charged to the company credit card. "The beautiful thing about cheaters," she told me during one of our strategy sessions, "is that they always leave a paper trail. Your husband thinks he's being clever, but he's actually been documenting his own misconduct for months." She was right. The evidence was overwhelming. Hotel receipts for rooms that weren't business-related, restaurant bills for intimate dinners that coincided with times when Declan claimed to be working late, even jewelry purchases that definitely weren't for his wife. But the professional consequences were even more devastating than the personal ones. "I spoke with Janet Morrison at Pinnacle Marketing," Monica informed me. "She's the HR director, and she's not happy. Apparently, Declan submitted a request for this Tokyo trip, claiming it was essential for landing a major client. He got approval for the travel expenses, the hotel costs, everything. But there is no client." "Exactly, which means he committed fraud. And since Tessa was complicit in the lie, she's equally culpable." I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. The social fallout was even more brutal than I'd expected. Our friend group, which had always been tight-knit and gossipy, turned into a pack of wolves when they smelled blood in the water. Sarah Chen, who'd been Tessa's maid of honor, called me 3 days after I'd shared the evidence with her. "Jamie, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm actually relieved, she said. We've all been walking on eggshells around Tessa for months. She's been so smug, so superior, acting like she was better than all of us because she had this big, important job and this exciting secret life. You knew? We suspected. The way she talked about Declan, the way she'd light up when he texted her during dinner. And she'd been making these snide comments about marriage, about how some people just settle for boring, comfortable relationships. Now we know she was talking about you. That stung, but it also felt liberating. I wasn't the only one who'd noticed the changes in Tessa's behavior. I wasn't crazy or paranoid or boring. I was just married to someone who'd stopped valuing what we had together. The whole group is talking about it, Sarah continued. Nobody can believe how stupid they were about the whole thing, using work email, charging everything to the company card, lying about the client meeting. It's like they wanted to get caught. Maybe they did. Maybe part of them wanted the secret to come out so they wouldn't have to keep pretending. But if that was the case, they were about to get more exposure than they'd bargained for. The story had spread beyond our immediate social circle. Tessa's co-workers were talking about it. Declan's golf buddies knew. Even the neighbors were gossiping about the couple who'd paused their marriage so the wife could run off to Japan with her boss. Mrs. Patterson, the neighborhood busybody who lived 2 doors down, stopped me while I was getting my mail. "Jamie, dear, I heard about Tessa," she said, with the kind of fake sympathy that barely concealed her excitement at having fresh gossip to share. "I always thought she was a bit too good for her own good, if you know what I mean." I didn't know what she meant, but I nodded anyway. "And that boss of hers," she continued. "I saw him pick her up a few times when her car was in the shop. Very flashy, very smooth. The type who thinks he can charm his way out of anything. Well, charm won't help him now, will it?" No, it wouldn't. Because Monica Porter was not the type of woman who could be charmed, and she was systematically dismantling every aspect of Declan's life with the precision of a surgeon and the ruthlessness of a general. She'd contacted his boss at the investment firm where he worked, providing evidence of his misuse of company resources. She'd reached out to his country club, where he'd apparently been bragging about his business trip to Tokyo. She'd even called his mother, a stern woman who'd always disapproved of Monica, but was apparently even less impressed with her son's adultery. "I want him to understand that actions have consequences," Monica explained when I asked if she thought we were going too far. "He made a choice to betray our marriage, to lie to his employer, to defraud his company. He thought he could do all of that without facing any real consequences. He was wrong." Meanwhile, I was dealing with my own emotional roller coaster. Part of me felt vindicated. I wasn't the boring, naive husband that Tessa had described in her emails. I was capable of fighting back, of protecting myself, of making sure that people who betrayed me faced consequences for their actions. But part of me also felt sad. 15 years of marriage were ending. Not with counseling or honest conversations or mutual decisions, but with lies and betrayal and public humiliation. Ethan, as usual, had the most practical perspective. "Look, man, you didn't choose this," he said when I expressed my doubts about the campaign we were waging. "Tessa chose it when she decided to cheat. Declan chose it when he decided to pursue a married woman. They made their choices, and now they get to live with the consequences. But what if we're destroying their lives? They destroyed their own lives. We're just making sure everyone knows about it." He took a swig of beer and shook his head. "Besides, it's not like you're making stuff up. You're just telling people the truth. If the truth destroys their reputations, maybe they should have thought about that before they decided to lie to everyone." He was right, but that didn't make it easier. I'd never been the type of person who enjoyed conflict or drama. I preferred to handle problems quietly, privately. But Tessa and Declan hadn't given me that option. They'd made our private business public the moment they decided to flaunt their affair in front of co-workers and friends. The breaking point came when I received a call from Janet Morrison, the HR director at Pinnacle Marketing. "Mr. Wyatt, I hope you don't mind me calling you directly," she said. Monica Porter gave me your number. I wanted to let you know that we've completed our investigation into the Tokyo trip. And? Both Mr. Porter and your wife have been terminated, effective immediately. The company takes fraud very seriously, and their actions were a clear violation of our ethics policies. Terminated. Tessa had lost her job. The job she'd been so proud of, the career she'd claimed was more important than our marriage, the position that had introduced her to Declan in the first place. Will there be criminal charges? I asked. That's still being determined. The amount of money involved isn't huge, but the principle matters. We can't have employees using company resources to fund their personal affairs. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen and tried to process what I was feeling. Relief, certainly. Vindication, but also a strange kind of emptiness. The woman I'd been married to for 15 years was about to come home to find that her entire life had imploded while she was gone, and I was the one who'd lit the fuse. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment, I thought it might be Tessa, calling from Tokyo to scream at me about the mess she was coming home to. But it wasn't Tessa. It was Monica. Declan just called. Apparently, someone at his office told him about the investigation. He's furious. Says he's going to sue everyone involved for defamation. I called her back immediately. Sue us for what? Telling the truth? That's what I told him, Monica said, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. I also told him that as a lawyer, I'd be happy to represent myself in any legal proceedings he wants to initiate. I don't think he'll be pursuing that option. What about Tessa? Has she called you? Not yet. But she will. They both will, once they realize the full extent of what's waiting for them at home. Are you ready for that? Mr. Wyatt, I've been preparing for this conversation for months without knowing it. I'm more than ready. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the woman I'd married 15 years ago, the one who'd laughed at my jokes and supported my dreams and promised to love me in sickness and in health, for better or for worse. Where had that woman gone? When had she turned into someone who could lie to my face while planning to leave me for another man? When had I become so boring, so comfortable, so easy to deceive? Maybe those were questions I'd never get answers to. Maybe it didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that I'd learned something important about myself in the past week. I wasn't the pushover that Tessa thought I was. I wasn't the boring, naive husband who would sit quietly while his wife destroyed their marriage. I was someone who fought back, someone who demanded consequences, someone who refused to be taken advantage of. Tessa and Declan were about to learn that the hard way. The call came at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, exactly 2 weeks into their Tokyo adventure. My phone buzzed with an international number, and I knew before I answered that my carefully orchestrated plan had finally reached them. Jamie. Tessa's voice was tight with barely controlled fury. What the hell have you done? I sat up in bed, our bed, which I'd been sleeping in alone while she shared hotel rooms with her lover, and smiled in the darkness. Good morning to you too, sweetheart. How's Tokyo? Are you and Declan enjoying your business trip? Cut the shit, Jamie. I just got off the phone with Janet Morrison. She says I've been fired. Do you have any idea what you've done to my career? I haven't done anything to your career. You did that all by yourself when you decided to defraud the company to fund your affair. It's not fraud. We're conducting legitimate business. With which client exactly? Because I called Yamamoto Industries myself. They've never heard of you or Declan. There is no business deal. There never was. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I could practically hear the wheels turning in her head as she realized how thoroughly she'd been caught. You called them? I called a lot of people, Tessa. Amazing how interested everyone is in hearing the truth about your little romantic getaway. You bastard. Her voice was shaking now, whether from anger or fear, I couldn't tell. You vindictive, pathetic bastard. Do you have any idea what you've done? I've done exactly what you asked me to do. You wanted a pause in our marriage, remember? Well, congratulations. It's been permanently paused. In fact, it's been completely stopped. I never said I wanted a divorce. You didn't have to say it. You wrote it. In about 50 different emails to your boyfriend. Very romantic stuff, by the way. Especially the part where you talked about how boring I am and how alive he makes you feel. Another long silence. Then, you read my emails? Your emails, your text messages, your cloud storage. Turns out you're not as careful with your passwords as you think you are. Did you know you used our anniversary date for your email password? I found that particularly touching. You had no right. I had every right. You're my wife. Or you were, until you decided to pause our marriage so you could audition my replacement. I could hear voices in the background. Declan, probably, trying to figure out what was happening to his carefully planned new life. Jamie, listen to me, Tessa said, her voice shifting to the tone she used when she was trying to manipulate me. I know this looks bad, but it's not what you think. Declan and I, we're just... You're just what? Just fucking in a hotel room that you charged to the company credit card? Just planning your future together while lying to both of your spouses? Just committing fraud to fund your affair? Don't talk to me like that. I'll talk to you however I want. You lost the right to tone police me when you decided to cheat on our marriage. The background voices were getting louder. I heard Declan say something about damage control and legal options. Is that Declan? I asked. Tell him Monica says hello, and that she's looking forward to taking him for everything he's worth in the divorce. Monica knows? Monica, an unexpectedly ruthless ally, had turned Declan's world inside out while I quietly finished Tessa's. I changed the locks, moved her things to storage, and made the affair and the fraud public. Her career evaporated, Declan's finances were wiped out, and their plans collapsed. Tessa begged, threatened legal fights, and tried to bargain, but the evidence and Monica's legal muscle left them exposed and bankrupt. I kept the house, the savings, and my dignity. They kept the ruin they'd earned. The old, naive Jamie was gone. What remained was a man who enforced consequences, and he wasn't done collecting. Tessa came home early, exhausted and broken. I refused to let her in, met her at a coffee shop instead, and listened as she tried to talk her way back into the life she'd destroyed. I showed her the article, the fraud charges, the social media post I'd made telling everyone the truth. By the time I was done, she finally understood. There was nothing left to fix. 3 months later, the divorce was final. Tessa was gone, broke, and unemployable. Declan lost everything to his wife Monica, who'd become my unexpected ally. I kept the house, the savings, and my peace. The man Tessa once called boring had turned out to be the one thing she never expected. Dangerous when betrayed. The old Jamie was gone. The new one was free. The end. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.